Okay, today's lesson is going to be measuring the pieces for a jewelry box, which we will be cutting and creating in our woodshop class. Materials for this project include a calculator, a square, a pencil, a ruler, a piece of paper, and your 2 pieces of wood. The jewelry box has 6 sides, a top, a bottom, 2 sides, and 2 ends. We'll be maximizing the amount of wood that we have and cutting these 6 pieces. Here are some pre-cut pieces you can see, so that they fill up as much space as possible, so we're not wasting any wood and we're utilizing as much space as possible. So in our measurements for the top and the bottom, we're going to split this piece of wood in half and give ourselves a little bit of room so that we have some extra wood for the fitting. Also, for the sides, we'll take up just over half of your second piece of wood, and the ends will set cross grain just like this. Now that we have our 2 pieces of paper, we'll start by measuring out the top and the bottom sections of our box. In order to do so, we need to measure, here I have a square, my 11 inches, which will go exactly to 11 inches, and half of that, which is 5.5 inches. So I'm going to measure out 5.5 inches in on one side, 5.5 inches in on the other side. There we go. Draw a line between them, and I exactly bisect my piece of paper, or my board. So there I am, 5.5 by 5.5. I also want to mark a 1/4 inch in all the way around to allow for anomalies in the wood and any jagged edge. So we're going to be recutting them. So I'm going to go 1/4 inch in all the way across and all the way down my paper, or my board for that matter. So quickly do that. Got a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, do my full measurements. Here we go, and we are clean across. Which will be equivalent to my board, which includes my top and my bottom. The saw itself will take off about a 1/16 of an inch here, which is allowable. So I know my 11 inches minus a 1/2 inch is 10.5 inches, which means that my 10.5 inches will be a total of 5.25. 10.5 divided by 2, 5.25 here. If I allow for a little space here, even if it's a 1/4 of an inch across, and it's still a little bit rough, but it's 1/4 inch across there and a 1/4 inch across here, it will give me, oops, there we go, it will give me a board that will be exactly the 5 and exactly the 5 inches. That will keep a nice even number across. Also, my 8.5 minus a 1/4 minus a 1/4 gives me 8 inches exactly for the length of my top, and 8 inches exactly for the length of my bottom. My next step will be measuring the end pieces from the top of the piece of wood, or in this case, the top of my piece of paper. My end pieces will need to fit along with my side pieces so that I'm making a good use of my space. I know that my end piece is going to be 5 inches, and I also want to give myself a little room at the top of the board, because the board does have splits in it and it is uneven. So once again, I'm going to measure out a 1/4 of an inch from the top draw my line. So that's my starting point. The total height, the total length of my end piece is 5 inches. So I want to measure the 5 inches plus a little bit to give room for the saw. There won't be any problem with splits in the middle of a board, but I want to give myself a little bit of room so that I can hand fit it, and I can always shave it down. Measure twice, cut once. So I'm going to go 5 inches plus about 1/8 of an inch. 5 inches plus about 1/8 of an inch, just to give myself a little bit of leeway. Okay, so I know that this piece here is going to be my end piece. I do not know the height of my end piece, but I do know the width. Okay, that's the end. That's the width of the end. This piece here I need to bisect. So if I measure it out, I find that I'm exactly at 5.5 inches right here. So I have 5.5 inches here. And I know that half of 5.5, if I want to do it here, you go 5.5 divided by 2 equals 2.75. So 2.75 inches in to the end is the bisection. 2 3/4. 2 3/4. And I know that this now is roughly going to be the height of my box. This is the height of my box that sits on the end here. Okay, that's the end piece of the box. So this will be a fairly shallow box, but for our purposes it will work just fine. Of course, again, I'm going to be giving myself a little bit of leeway, but we can use the full length of what we have here to measure out the end of this. So I know that this distance here is 2.75, and this distance here is 2.75 inches, okay? 2.75 inches, 2.75 inches, okay? This here is going to be the width of 2.75 inches on the top pieces of paper. I need to draw 2 of them. Give myself some room here. I've got plenty of room, so I'll give myself a good 1/2 inch. Let's see here if I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to give myself a 1/4 inch on all sides here. 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch. I can go ahead and draw this on down. But I know that I don't want to cut these. I want my full length at this point for these 2 side edges. And then I can cut them down to size as I need to, because I know. No, that actually, you know what? I'm going to use that 1/4 inch all the way through. That was my mistake. So go ahead and make the 1/4 inch all the way through on that side. Do the same on the other side. Measure out your 1/4 inch. And draw this out. Okay. So now we have a side A, side B, and we know the side A is 2.5 inches wide, and side A is the same length as this. It's 8 inches wide, 8 inches long. This is 8 inches long. Okay, 2.5 by 8. My end pieces need to each be 2.75. 2.75, not 2.5. 2.75. So I'm going to measure it 2 3/4 here. 2 3/4 here. And I'm only drawing my line on the top half of my paper because I need my full lengths here. There's one cut. And then I'm going to measure again from this side over because this cut's going to take off a 1/16 of an inch, and I need to be very careful where I cut that. So I'm going to use the center part as waste material. 2.75 here, 2.75 here, and I have my second end piece. So here I have end A and end B. So I have my full measurements. So my end A is 5 1/4. So 5 plus, 5 plus. The plus just means a little longer than 5 to give us a little room. And once we get on the saw, we'll be more careful to get it exact. And then 2.75 inches on the height. On the height. And that's our paper. So now we have our top, we have our bottom, we have our two sides and our two ends. Last thing you need to do after you double check your measurements, remember, measure twice, cut once, is to make sure your name, date, and period are on the back. Name, date, and your period. Go ahead and circle those. Do the same for your second piece of paper. Staple them together and turn them in. Good job, and we look forward to putting together our box, our final product. Fantastic.